Welcome to Leaders of Tomorrow, India's only daily television platform for small businesses. Over the past 7 years, we've understood what matters most to you, the entrepreneur, funding and mentoring. I'm Sunanda Jayaseelan. On the show tonight, bringing you highlights of a panel discussion we did from a roadshow in Ahmedabad, talking about how the city is a case study when it comes to small businesses and entrepreneurs. My colleague Pooja Jain was there speaking with a panel of experts. Listening to what they had to say.
To kick off the conversation, Samir, I'd like to start with you. Ahmedabad has long been described as India's most desirable business destination. As an outsider looking in, help me understand why.
So I'm going to talk to you in my capacity of having spent last 25 years in advising businesses in India as well as globally, and I've been fortunate enough to have a glimpse of what Ahmedabad is all about.
Sure.
And as a representative of Vadvani Foundation and Advantage program, which focuses on small businesses and startups, I have sort of thought about 2-3 points which make Ahmedabad interesting. The first is, I think, genes. Very importantly, I think Ahmedabad has had the fortune of having business run in the families for centuries. And in fact, forget the 16th century when you had a particular regime coming in, and that kind of instilled the entire business acumen in the families. And for the last 500 years, the trade, the business, the acumen to basically transact in goods and services has been around. And that really plays a big role. That's first, to me, is very, very important, because when you're born with a predisposition to actually doing business and adding value and creating wealth, it makes a big impact. So that's the first reason. The second is that Ahmedabad has been able to very nicely transition from traditional businesses to the new ways of doing things. Anything which is value creation and wealth creation, Ahmedabad has done a very good transition. And that requires A, leadership, B, ability of its business people to be able to quickly adapt their ways. And Ahmedabadis, as they are known, are good at adaptive strategies. And adaptive strategies always win. Right from Darwin to business, we all know that. If you're really fixated on an idea and don't change it based on the business dynamics, you're likely to fail. But Gujaratis in general and Ahmedabadis in general are good at adaptive businesses. And that's the second very important thing. And thirdly, I think the startup part or the SMEs part, and where the government has played a role in terms of creating gift or new financial capital, or attracting money, for example, of really creating infrastructure, which has got a very high positive correlation to growth, by the way. I think these 3-4 factors really make Ahmedabad a very interesting city.
I think you've certainly summed it up well. And if we were to sort of peel back one layer of the onion here and talk facts and figures, and I'll direct this question to you, Supriya. It's been said that the GDP of this city is upwards of $65 billion. It's been said that the employment rate is, sub 1%. I believe it's 0.9% compared to the national average of 5%. So we aren't just walking the walk, we're talking the talk here. It translates into facts and figures. And one thing I've commonly heard is that the sort of entrepreneurial spirit here is as competitive as it is collaborative. And is that something that essentially makes this city stand out? Love your thoughts.
So maybe I'd like to add and extend where Samir left off.
Please.
I think it's a little beyond, it goes a little beyond genes per se. Most of the times we romanticize entrepreneurship. An entrepreneur is often seen as this hero who's changing the world, but it's a lot of hard work. And it's that ability to be open to failure. I think as a society, as the community, local community here, failure is fully accepted. It's a way of life, and that creates such a strong platform for any young kid who's thinking of an idea or a direction, as well as somebody who's been working for about 40 years and still thinking in the same direction. So that it's almost a way of life here. The other part, of course, and this perhaps goes to the tech entrepreneurship ecosystem. I think a large part of it also draws upon the education systems, education infrastructure in the city here. We've got fantastic institutes of national importance, and a lot of talent from these institutes is thinking about entrepreneurship and thinking about setting up in Gujarat because it's easier to fail, because there's a more collaborative community, which is where you would perhaps find greater support as against to another city, another ecosystem where it will be harder to sort of access such support.
Sure. Ranu, what I seem to be gathering from the conversation is that entrepreneurship, has no age limit here, essentially. But to your understanding, how much overlap is there between the startup community in Ahmedabad and the student community?
We've talked about how Ahmedabad is, I think, conditioned. Over the generations, they have been conditioned to get into family businesses. Most of them do that, but I think in the younger generation, there's also a very high appetite to do the new age businesses, to take a risk, venture outside, try out something new other than their family businesses. And again, as Ahmedabad is a house of so many good institutions, like IM is there, then MICA is there, NID is there, and even in other colleges, the culture, I think, by way large is people do want to follow business, they want to take risk. So there is very high number of startups which the younger generations are venturing into. They want to try something new. There's a very high appetite vis-a-vis, I think, other cities wherein people want to take comfortable jobs, draw salaries after graduating from these good A-list colleges.
So if someone in this audience is an entrepreneur or is considering pursuing entrepreneurship, what are the resources available at their disposal, in this city?
So I think if you're mid-career, so Ahmedabad has 22 incubators, and a lot of these incubators are open to anyone going out there and applying there. Gujarat government has 2 schemes. One, they provide, I think, 20 lakhs, 10 lakhs for technology development or product development, and 10 lakhs for marketing. So that's where they can avail capital. A lot of these incubators have mentor network as far as operational expertise is concerned. Most of these incubators are in institutions like IM, NID, and others. You also have GLS and a lot of institutions. So if you Google it, you can get through that. You have a good angel network, which is the Ahmedabad Angel Network. That's where you can get capital. And yeah, so these are the, this sort of sums it up in terms of how a mid-career person, or in fact, a lot of students start up because these incubators essentially encourage students to come up with ideas.
Sure. Well, say if I were to approach an incubator, or a member of this audience were to approach the incubator, there've got to be some fundamental criteria, right? Like, as in, does the idea need to exist on paper, or does there need to be proof of concept? Do you need to be in the prototype phase? Do you need to have, a fully baked management team? Do you need to be profitable, for example? So what I'm trying to understand is, are these incubators truly open to companies at all stages in their life cycle?
So I think most of the time we think that we are chasing these incubators, but unfortunately once you are on the other side, you will realize that incubators are chasing you because there are so many and they have their own targets to fulfill. So of course, having said that, each of them have their own criteria. Sometimes they also have their own focus. So if you go to NID, they're more design focused. If you have CIIE has many programs. So there could be a fintech program, there could be an agri program, and they can look at all of those. So I think it's you have to see what's going on, what is the focus of that institution and incubator, and go out there and apply. And of course, Vadhwani itself does a lot of work on going to these student-led, going to colleges and encouraging student-led startups. So I think you're doing phenomenal work as far as encouraging students.
And we certainly want to hear more about that.
So just to sort of build on what she mentioned, very briefly, we have kind of recognized the need that we are all talking about here. And the Vadvani Foundation actually helps the young entrepreneurs in several ways. The first is really educating them on how to nurture an idea, how to take the idea to fruition, how to ask for help, how to ask for mentorship, which is what we provide. When you are making a pitch to an investor or let's say to a prospective VC venture capitalist, what are the 3-4 things that you must remember? What is the preparation that one needs to do? So we have a program whereby we actually teach through a curriculum, a structured curriculum, all these different aspects. So and we also sort of institutionalized what we call practice ventures and real life ventures, which kind of train these different aspiring entrepreneurs to actually become eligible, qualified, prepared to actually make a pitch to the investors. So
Sure.
that's very, very important.
All right, let's dip in a short break. On that note, we'll continue talking about why Ahmedabad is the perfect case study for small businesses when we come back. Just stay tuned. Welcome back. You're with us here on Leaders of Tomorrow. Tonight, continuing to bring you highlights of our panel discussion from a roadshow in Ahmedabad.
Harshvardhan, very interested in bringing you into the conversation now. You know, Lending Cart is practically a household name. And given that we've just heard the long list of resources that are available at the entrepreneur's disposal, I'd like to understand if you actually leveraged any of those in building your own company's, growth story.
So, again, Pooja, I come from a typical business family, right? So, for me, like for the rest of the others, when I said I want to start my business, it was a natural progression for my family, right? Nothing was like, you're leaving your well-placed job, you just returned from London, you left your job in London, why do you want to do that, you're well-placed and stuff like that. So it was not much. My parents were far more happy that you've come back home, right? So they were far more happy that I was back home, and it was a natural progression. We have an ecosystem over here, right? So an ecosystem is not, like it is about an external world, right? But you need an internal environment as well, where you have somebody to talk to in your family, mentorship from your parents, or a right attitude from your parents as well to support while you're going through this, right? Because all across as an entrepreneurship, like Supriya suggested, it looks bedazzled when we come on platforms, when we speak and everything, but there is a lot going inside as well, right? So it's quite a lonely job that you have to keep on pursuing, and if you don't have right internal environment or right family to support you for all those things, it's difficult. I think touchwood for us, we had that environment. For me, I had the right kind of environment support from ecosystem and family. We didn't have that much of a need of going out and figuring this out. But for a lot of my peers and colleagues who don't have that, incubators do help them a lot, right? Because you meet like-minded people over there, and it is not an instant success, right? Everything has 99% perseverance, right? And it's exactly similar for entrepreneurship as well. It might be, if you pick the right industry, it might turn out to be 98%. Otherwise, it doesn't go to 50, 60%, right? So that's where I think incubators help a lot, where you meet like-minded people. And I think it struggles as well when you struggles or rejoices or joys, when you see somebody else going through that same journey, it does help. So we used to also engage with a lot of entrepreneurs, even in family, whether running small businesses, large businesses, sharing their pain, sharing our pains, it does help.
Sure.
Sorry, Pooja, if I
Sure.
can interject. I want to pick one point that you mentioned, Harsha, a very important point that you mentioned. And that reminds me of one of the things that we are doing is to actually create peer networks of entrepreneurs, wherein the experienced entrepreneurs or little more privileged entrepreneurs can share their experiences, learnings with those who are aspiring ones, but they do not have any family environment to sort of as a cushion. And that's incredibly important, because at least what we have experienced is the learning that they get from the fellow entrepreneurs is immensely impactful, much more than the scholastic academic rigor that one could put in.
Sure. Harshvardhan just mentioned that, it's not instant success as the startup. And even if you knock on an incubator's doors, and even if they welcome you, it's not indefinitely, right? There is a time horizon within which you must demonstrate results. So how does an entrepreneur come to the determination that they've given it their all in terms of time, energy, blood, sweat, and tears? Or how do you find it within you to keep on going? What is the internal barometer there?
Wow, this is a very interesting question. What really keeps you moving, ultimately? And I think several times we kind of face failures. I have faced that several times in my career so far. A single objective that really keeps on moving is very important. I mean, you possibly need to have a larger purpose to be able to move forward. I mean, this answer may sound too philosophical in nature, but it's very important to kind of, have a larger purpose that why you want to do something. And everything else which comes in between is a part of it.
Yeah, and I think, just to add to this, I think it's very important because at least in our experience, just to share with everyone, you can be assured that in the first time, it's very rare that you will get it right, 100% right in first time. At least in our experience, we have definitely seen entrepreneurs actually decide the destination. They know what problem to solve, and that's very important. It's very important to know what problems that they want to solve. But eventually, when actually idea takes fruition and actually hits the commercial world, invariably that idea is morphed into something. Yeah. And that's very important for the entrepreneur to recognize that. One is that at that point of time, one has to reduce oneself to its ego and then say, okay, here is what I thought about, but I'm willing to change because this is what is going to make success, and yet it's going to solve the problem. I think that attitude is very critical.
Given the lower cost of living here in Ahmedabad, given the company's ability to operate in a bootstrap mode for so much longer, doesn't that inherently, make entrepreneurs from Ahmedabad more resistant when it comes to failure, or even able to embrace failure to a larger extent because the recovery isn't as extreme or dramatic?
Yeah, I do agree to that because you always have a second opportunity available. If you are failing today, say you have failed in A, you always say, oh, there is a B also there, or a C also there, where possibly I can jump in. So possibly when you think of failures, and people also here, I have seen people supporting people who are failing. That is also one thing, because usually you find ke bhai, arey yaar, kya kar rahe ho tum? Don't do that. But here you will find people who are also there to encourage you.
There are two points that come to my mind when Pankaj Bhai is talking about it. At least I have seen that a lot of entrepreneurs have got a particular good idea and they can take it to a particular level. But when it comes to scale, they balk at that point of time because one of the things that we have seen is that they need to get their unit economics right, and this is very specific. I've seen a lot of the entrepreneurs get the unit economics wrong, which is why when it comes to scaling, it's suddenly you discover that your return on invested capital is not really that attractive. So over a period of time, it catches up. And that's very important from the preparation point of view to talk about the hard facts in terms of what is important in addition to the philosophy. And that's one. And the second is, I think, in terms of the losses, I've seen that a lot of the entrepreneurs, when they think in portfolios, they think differently from only a single idea. So for example, if there are 3 problems to be solved and then they want to actually deploy capital to solve all the 3 problems, the answer could be very different from solving just one problem and then looking at capital deployment that one problem. I think that ability to think in portfolio and standalone is very critical.
Ahmedabad is home to a hardworking and highly literate workforce. You've got clearly a very stable political environment. Now let's talk government policy. Where is the government falling short, and where have they perhaps, beaten expectations?
You're going to get me in trouble for this. But I think the only 2 rupees that I have for this is, I think there's a lot that's at least put at the mouth to flow. I think the government just needs to come in and fix the plumbing, because what's being put into the ecosystem is not reaching where it should. So perhaps newer, if let's say we talk about the amount of grants that the government passes on in the ecosystem to be distributed to early stage startups, how else can that be reached to the various categories, various sectors, various stages of startups? Because in the current mechanism, overly depending on incubators, their existing programs may not be making the dent that it's supposed to. So perhaps the government, while it's putting significant amount of resources in the system, it needs to come in to perhaps fix the plumbing for this to flow to those who need it the most.
Yeah, I think that's an important point. And
Yeah.
just to take an example, at Vadvani Foundation, we have a program which is called SBIR, which is a Small Business Innovation. And that is modeled on what US government has done after the money is put in. I think your point is correct. The flow of the money has to be also managed very well. And that requires a very stringent, rigorous mechanism to be able to monitor how the deployment has been done, whether it is yielding results, yes, no. I think after the money is disbursed rather, I think then there is a tendency to say, okay, now I've done my job, I'm giving money. I think that's where the catch is. If that stops.
So I would like to add to what you just said, and I think the core inherent strength of the state is other core industries, right? What is really unique about this state is where you have, startup entrepreneurship coming up. There are also user industries who would want to co-create with you, right? A lot of things were happening in silos. And I'm saying were because the initiatives have happened whereby we are now kind of engaging with startup ecosystem partners, with the government driving it, FICCI, for example, GAZIA, for example, NASCOM Center of Excellence being here, for example, TAI, for example. Now we are seeing that all these ecosystem partners are coming together. And I think there is a drive there. I see CIIE also is doing phenomenal there. And several other such incubators or accelerators are doing very well. So what's happening is a lot of things were happening in silos, but they are coming together. And I think that's a great thing to happen. That's one. Second, there are clusters. So when I talk about clusters within Gujarat, we talk about Ahmedabad, we talk about Baroda, we talk about Surat for gems and jewelry, we talk about Rajkot for its other own strength. Now, these are the core industries requiring a lot of digitalization. And she mentioned about IoT, for example. These are the clusters where we see, as NASCOM and as GAZIA both, a lot of small IT entrepreneurship is happening and opening up to be able to serve and to be able to co-create with this ecosystem. And that's very unique to this state. And I strongly therefore recommend, and second to what Shreya just mentioned about forming and having policies to enable this furthermore. So it's not just IT services per se, but you're creating innovation and innovative products out of here.
And also I think the point that you made in terms of applying it to the strengths of that where the city is incredibly important, because if you look at the research, everywhere the startup hubs have prospered when they have leveraged their strength and applied the new techniques to their strengths. So let's say imagine a digital marketing strength applied to textile and garments and cotton and fashion. And the other day I was in Egypt and Middle East, and they have done an incredible job of applying the new techniques to the strengths of that ecosystem. And that point, if government sort of reflects on it a little bit more, I think it will be very useful.
You know, ladies and gentlemen, I think that makes for a wonderful note upon which to close. I have to thank all of our panelists for sharing so many rich anecdotes from your personal and your professional journeys. A huge round of applause for them, please. I think it's deeply deserved.
That's our show tonight. If you have any feedback for us, do get in touch with us. Our details are coming up on your screen. Also, which city are we headed to next? What is the theme there? All of that is there on your website. Thanks very much for watching. Have a good night.